Chapter 6. Squires, Family Farm. Stars shined in the night sky, waiting for the sun to cast a golden hue over the vast Texas landscape, presenting them with the promise of a new day. Bill Squires and his young son, Richie, were already busy preparing their horses for the day's cattle roundup. As Bill tugged at the saddle's leather straps, ensuring its snug fit, he mentally reviewed their equipment checklist. "Got the fencing staples with you?" Bill inquired, throwing a glance at his son. He could sense the bubbling anticipation in Richie, who had recently turned 16. "Right here, Dad," Richie responded, flashing the staples with a grin. Today marked more than just a regular ranch day for him. He was just hours away from getting his driver's license. While he had been driving around the ranch for years, the thought of officially taking the ranch truck out on his own was thrilling. Bill and Richie stood ready, scanning the horizon for the rest of their crew. As the moonlight painted the Texas plains, the silhouettes of Tom, Robert, and Sierra gradually came into view. The sight was familiar and comforting, a testament to the bond that tied the Squires family together. Their shared duties on the ranch were more than just responsibilities. They were rituals, passed down from one generation to the next. The Squires had a tried-and-true method for their cattle roundups. The early morning was their chosen time, with the cool air offering some respite before the Texas sun dominated the sky. Their packs were meticulously prepared, each item serving a purpose, from sustenance to essential tools. The importance of being equipped for any situation was ingrained in them. Firearms were an integral part of their gear, not as a symbol of might, but as a tool of necessity in the unpredictable world of ranching. Bill's cherished Winchester .30-30, a relic from his grandfather's days, was always by his side. It was more than just a weapon, it was a piece of family history. Richie, on the other hand, had developed a fondness for the more modern .44 Magnum Ruger rifle, appreciating its precision and power. Tom's choice was a testament to his rugged nature. With a six-gun holstered at his side, he moved with an ease and confidence that came from years of experience. Even while wrestling down a bull, that six-gun never seemed out of place. It was an extension of him. The Squires family united, drawing strength from one another. Their shared responsibilities on the ranch were lightened by the bond of kinship and the shared history that wove them together. Among them, Robert stood out not just for his quiet intensity, but also for his exceptional marksmanship. Having served as a sniper with the renowned 101st Airborne, he bore the scars and skills of 13 rigorous years in the military. 6 of those years were on foreign soil, and after facing the harshest realities of war, Robert found solace and purpose on the ranch. Yet his passion for firearms remained undiminished. While the rest of the Squires family favored more traditional weapons, Robert's choice was an outlier. The Noreen BN-36 chambered in .30-06. Modeled after the AR-15 design, it was a semi-automatic powerhouse with a generous 20-round magazine. The first time Robert fired the BN-36 at the range, there was an instant connection. His previous weapon during military service, the M24 sniper rifle, was chambered in .308 cartridge. But the .30-06, especially fired from the BN-36's 24-inch barrel, had an effective range that surpassed the .308. Enhancing the rifle's capabilities was a Mark IV loopholed LRT scope. However, Robert no longer sought out game. Instead, he found satisfaction in the discipline of marksmanship. On the ranch, he set up a target exactly 1,100 yards away. Every day, after making meticulous calculations, he'd indulge in a single shot, aiming to hit that distant target cold bore, a testament to his unwavering precision and discipline. Robert's passion for firearms was more than just a hobby. It was a testament to his craftsmanship and precision. He customized his Noreen rifle with a Spec War suppressor, ensuring minimal noise disruption. He even crafted special subsonic rounds for the .30-06, which he affectionately called Silent Nights. These rounds enabled him to shoot accurately up to 300 yards, all the while maintaining the serenity of the surrounding night. However, his modifications came with their own set of challenges. The rifle's unique silhouette didn't fit into traditional saddle sheaths. Undeterred, Robert collaborated with a local leather artisan to craft a custom sheath that would accommodate his prized possession. Adapting to the new sheath took some time for his horse, Big Boy, but eventually the majestic beast adjusted. Big Boy was no ordinary horse. A magnificent palomino, he towered at 16 hands with a glistening golden coat and a flowing blonde mane. Robert shared a profound bond with Big Boy, having nurtured him from birth. Their relationship had only deepened over time. Even when Robert left for his final tour in Afghanistan, their bond remained unbroken. Upon his return, it was evident that the bond between man and horse had transcended mere companionship. It was a connection rooted deep in their souls. Sierra was an interesting blend of contrasting worlds. While attending college and having a passion for creating documentaries, she was equally comfortable on the ranch, among all its dust and grime. Though her days might be spent on scholarly pursuits, she never hesitated to throw herself wholeheartedly into the rugged work of the ranch. Her signature looks combined femininity and functionality. Her rich, dark brown hairs, which could have easily adorned a glamorous college event, were always pragmatically tied back and threaded through a well-worn cap while on the ranch. The cap, which used to proudly advertise Willie's feed store, was now just a faded testament to many suns and storms it had witnessed. The hat's importance to her remained a mystery to many, but its presence was as consistent as the sunrises over the Texas plains. In terms of armament, Sierra chose a more modest .22 caliber Black Hawk revolver, a relic from her father's younger days when he showcased his quick-draw skills. While she had the capability to handle larger firearms, she displayed an affinity for the lightweight, nostalgic sidearm. And uniquely, alongside the typical ranch gear, Sierra's pack bore the weight of her modern passion, a compact camera fixed to her cap, always ready to capture moments of ranch life, intertwining her love for her roots and her burgeoning love for storytelling. "Sierra," Bill's voice echoed through the early morning stillness as they reconvened. The pre-dawn light was dim, but it didn't take long for Bill to spot the camera perched on the brim of Sierra's cap as she approached. Uncle Bill had an irrepressible knack for teasing, a playful trait that endeared him to everyone. "Now, Sierra," he began with a mock-serious tone, "everyone knows cameras are supposed to be on the left side of the cap. It's practically a rule of fashion." Sierra, used to her uncle's jests, responded with a cheeky grin. "Well, considering you still wear socks with sandals, I'm not too worried about fashion advice from you, Uncle Bill." The two shared a light-hearted chuckle before Bill's expression softened, revealing his genuine curiosity. "So, which story are you capturing today with that camera of yours?" he inquired, showing the deep respect he held for her craft. The family shared appreciation for Sierra's knack for storytelling, even if sometimes they were the unwitting stars of her narratives. Sierra's humor and sarcasm were reminiscent of Bill's, making their banter all the more enjoyable. When Bill questioned her about the subject of her latest project, Sierra flashed him a sly grin, her eyes dancing with mischief. "I thought I'd try something different this time. Let the story unfold naturally from the footage," she replied, excitement evident in her tone. Bill, ever the perceptive one, gave her a knowing look. "Or you just wanted to play around with your new camera, didn't you?" Caught in her little ruse, Sierra responded with a laugh. "I have to go help Robert unload the horses. Don't make this doc about you." She teased, pointing a finger at him and chuckling as she headed towards the trailer. The group set out riding along the ridge, mostly in comfortable silence. The serene atmosphere interrupted only by the distant hum they had been hearing. As the sound grew louder, it became unmistakably that of engines, either motorcycles or ATVs. Such disturbances weren't uncommon. Thrill-seekers occasionally found their way onto the property, often lost while navigating the trails. But this morning felt different. The gentle serenity just before dawn, usually a time they cherished for its tranquility, was now overshadowed by an unsettling intrusion. The sound grew louder, indicating whoever was coming their way was in no mood for leisurely exploration. The peaceful start to their day was about to take an unexpected turn. In a hushed tone, Robert turned to his father. "Doesn't seem right, does it? Riding at this hour?" Tom narrowed his eyes, trying to discern the distant sounds, his seasoned instincts kicking in. "It's definitely not just some folks who took a wrong turn," he remarked cautiously. Bill's brow furrowed in concentration. "Let's head eastward, but keep it quiet," he suggested, gesturing subtly in the desired direction. Those who didn't catch his direction relied on their instinct to stay close and follow his lead. Drawing nearer to the origin of the noise, the situation began to crystallize. Bill barely breathed the word, "Rustlers," and everyone's senses sprung to life. The sight of multiple ATVs darting around and the unmistakable distress calls of the cattle confirmed their suspicions. The rustlers were expertly herding the cattle, using the ATVs to direct them with swift precision. It was evident that the cattle were being forcibly and hurriedly driven away from their familiar territory. The initial impulse of the group was to immediately intervene, especially considering the gravity of cattle rustling. Yet, they were well aware of their isolation, with no cell phone signal to fall back on. Bill took a moment, then, with a gravitas that drew their attention, whispered, "My gut tells me to rush down there, but we've got to think this through." He paused, listening to the chaotic sounds below. "We can't afford any recklessness." After a beat, he added, "I've got a strategy in mind." Turning to Robert, his eyes inquiring, he asked, "You brought your suppressor, didn't you?" Robert, taken aback by the sudden question, pondered the implications. The idea of resorting to lethal force over cattle theft unsettled him deeply. Regardless of Bill's intentions, Robert knew he had to tread carefully. Robert just slightly dipped his head and said, "No, I didn't see a need for the extra weight." Bill looked down the valley and back at Robert. "Okay, with the noise down there, I don't think they would even hear a shot, so this is what I want you to do." Robert's heart rate quickened when he heard his uncle begin, "Here's what I want you to do." Memories of his time overseas surged back, a time when pulling the trigger was a matter of survival. But to take a life over cattle theft, it felt incomprehensible. However, as Bill detailed his strategy, he caught Robert's disturbed expression, then realized the weight of what he may have thought he would be asking of his nephew. Raising his voice slightly, Bill got Robert's attention. "Robert, listen up, son." Preparing to voice his objections, Robert began, "I can't just—" Bill quickly interjected, "Shoot the ATVs. Do you think you can hit them?" A wave of relief washed over Robert. Grinning, he responded, "Absolutely." Under his breath, he added with a smirk, "Too easy, too easy." Bill meticulously outlined his plan. Once Robert incapacitates their ATVs, the dim light should make it look like engine failure. He emphasized, making sure everyone understood, "We're aiming only at the engines, not at the men. Regardless of their intentions, no one gets hurt." He paused to let it sink in. "The hope is that with their transport compromised, they'll see the operation as a bust and decide to leave." As Bill relayed the plan, Robert was already busy securing his rifle and finding a spot to tether Big Boy. The plan resonated with the group, especially Sierra. From the moment she'd deduced they were rustlers, adrenaline had surged through her veins. This was the golden ticket for her documentary. She toyed with a title in her mind, Red River Rustlers, but abbreviating it to Triple ERs, no, she mused, too cliché. She wanted her work to stand out. Engrossed in her thoughts, she nonetheless made sure her equipment was in perfect order. Missing this footage wasn't an option. The group strategically positioned themselves just beneath the ridge's crest to stay out of the rustlers' sight. The only thing that might give them away was Bill's sizable hat. In the right light, its shadow resembled a condor, ready to take flight. From their vantage point, it became evident that the rustlers knew a thing or two about handling cattle, but their methods were far from polished. It wasn't surprising, considering rustlers weren't usually the sharpest tools in the shed. Once they'd settled on a plan, Robert moved to a position eastward, slightly ahead of the rustlers' path. He identified a cluster of gnarled cedar trees, perfect for concealment, not only providing cover, but also minimizing any potential muzzle flash. While there was sufficient light to execute his shot, the lingering shadows could easily betray his location with an ill-timed flash. He secured Big Boy a little further down the slope. With his rifle ready, Robert retrieved his pack, which held essentials like a sandbag, water, a rangefinder, and an additional magazine. Even though he was confident he wouldn't need the spare ammunition, old habits die hard. Robert nestled between cedar branches, his body instinctively adapting to the familiar posture of a sniper, despite the non-hostile nature of the situation. Drawing upon years of military discipline, he surveyed the scene below, his rangefinder catching two distinct reference points, a sturdy rock standing 635 yards away and a bush at 602 yards. These benchmarks allowed Robert to calibrate his scope accordingly, taking into account ridge slope, wind direction, and ambient temperature. Now, it was a waiting game. The rustlers' clumsiness was evident as they herded the cattle. Robert's patience waned, but he knew he had to seize the moment when the cattle moved beyond his chosen range marker. Time seemed to slow as he watched the cattle pass his landmark shrub, and in its wake a rustler on an ATV maneuvering towards a stray cow. Robert's finger, practiced and precise, slid into the trigger guard, edging ever so slowly towards the trigger itself. Simultaneously he regulated his breathing, each exhale and inhale measured. He aimed for that brief pause between breaths, the ideal moment to take a shot, synchronized with the delicate touch required for his hair-trigger rifle. His focus sharpened, zeroing in on the ATV's engine. Every element of the shot, from his breathing to the trigger sensitivity, lined up flawlessly. The moment was near. "What the?" he exclaimed. The cow started walking away with the shrub. Was it even close to the same spot? Robert thought to himself. Then he immediately started scanning for the rock. "Hopefully one of the other damned cows is not that hungry," he said. Robert's eyes focused intently on the approaching ATV, which was rapidly nearing the large rock he'd previously marked. With the precision of a seasoned marksman, he calculated the vehicle's speed, adjusted his aim slightly, and took a deep breath. As the ATV reached the designated spot, Robert exhaled gently. His finger gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle's sharp report was followed by a muted thud. To Robert's satisfaction, the ATV rolled to a stop, smoke curling up from the engine. The rustler sat, momentarily stunned, looking at the now disabled vehicle. A smug sense of accomplishment washed over Robert. The rustler's dreams of an easy cattle heist had been thwarted, and Robert knew that this tale would provide hours of entertainment at the local feed store. He glanced over at Bill, expecting to see a proud nod or a smile, but was met with a sight that made his heart drop. Bill's trademark hat seemed to float upwards, seemingly lifted by a strong gust. But as it did, a terrifying scarlet geyser sprayed from his back. The world around Robert began to blur as he comprehended the chilling scene unfolding before him. Robert stared in shock at the surreal image before him. Bill's body stood eerily upright, still clutching the Winchester .30-30, while the space where his head once was remained vacant. Before Robert could process the grim scene, the sharp retort of a distant rifle shot echoed, cementing the reality of the situation. Time seemed to warp. Moments that felt like minutes sped up into a blur. Panic tightened in Robert's chest, but survival instincts, honed from years of training, propelled him into action. His eyes darted to the rustlers. Not just simple cattle thieves, they looked more like a tactical unit. Radios in hand, they began scouring the ridge. Their gear and M4 rifles equipped with ASIOG sights seemed out of place for mere rustlers. Robert deduced that the deadly shot hadn't come from them. The roar of the ATV's engines grew louder as they charged towards his family. Gunfire erupted. The unmistakable thunder of Ritchie's .44 Magnum blended with the sharp cracks of revolvers. Robert, realizing the imminent threat, took aim at the lead ATV driver. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, a spray of dirt erupted in front of his face. "Sniper!" thundered in Robert's mind. He immediately pivoted westward, intently searching the valley for the source of the fatal shot. Through the increasing light of dawn, Robert identified a figure perched atop a semi-trailer in the valley, previously glimpsed in passing. The sight of multiple semis and an improvised corral briefly registered in his mind, but he had no time to process it. Another bullet flew dangerously close, snapping him back to the immediate threat. Relying on his instincts and training, he quickly measured the distance to the sniper. 935 yards. Quickly adjusting his scope, having memorized the dope sittings, taking a deep breath and letting it out, he gently squeezed the trigger. The distant figure slumped over the rifle, eerily reminiscent of a puppet whose strings had been cut. Gunfire echoed nearby. Robert recognized it originated from where his family was. Fueled by adrenaline and concern, he moved swiftly yet silently, blending into the shadows of the terrain as he made his way toward the sounds of conflict. The eerie stillness after 50 yards was chilling. Robert's heart raced, the silence being more unnerving than the gunfire itself. Visions of his sister, father, and cousin consumed his thoughts, each step feeling like an eternity. 100 yards further, and the gruesome scene laid bare before him. two rustlers ominously standing over the lifeless figures of his loved ones. Driven by adrenaline and rage, Robert's approach was swift, his Noreen firing with deadly precision. Each pull of the trigger sent a rustler dancing in a grotesque ballet, the powerful rounds propelling them like rag dolls gone haywire. As the final bullet left his chamber and the gun locked open, the rustlers collapsed lifeless. Robert rushed to the site of the standoff, heart pounding. Taking a knee, he quickly reloaded, eyes darting, ears straining, nose twitching for any hint of another threat. Every ounce of his training urged him not to look at the still forms beneath him, to remain vigilant to survive. Suddenly, a slight movement. Whipping around, rifle at the ready, he searched for his next target when, astonishingly, Sierra rose from the dust like a phoenix reborn. All thoughts of defense left him. Robert's weapon clattered to the ground, and he sprinted to his sister, embracing her tightly, gratitude and relief flooding through him like a hawk getting a field mouse for dinner. He squeezed her tight, and then threw her to about arm's length. "Are you hit? Hurt? Anywhere? Are you?" Her head's faint shake and faraway look in her eyes told Robert that Sierra was teetering on the edge of shock. As he tried to anchor his emotions, the devastating scene of their family sprawled around them pressed its weight upon him. However, there was an immediate priority, grounding Sierra. Scanning the vicinity, his gaze locked onto Uncle Bill's horse. Robert remembered the Old Crow whiskey that Bill kept in his saddlebag, aged and barely recognizable, but it would do the job. Grabbing it, he gently tilted it to Sierra's lips, urging her to take a sip. The first drink left her unfazed, but the second brought a spark back into her eyes, a small, reassuring sign. Determined to piece together the madness, Robert took a bracing swig from the bottle, steeling himself for what he was about to face. The scene was heart-wrenching. Even though the lifeless forms of his father and cousin clearly indicated their fates, he still compulsively checked for pulses, driven by an irrational hope. Uncle Bill's passing seemed mercifully swift. Robert then turned his attention to the rustlers in their black tactical gear. Their outfit screamed sophistication, not your ordinary cattle thieves. He flipped one body over and, with a mixture of curiosity and dread, reached for the man's wallet to seek any clues. "That won't be any help," Robert said to himself when he noticed that a round from the .30-06 had passed through the man, expanding and shredded his wallet when it exited. Robert moved on to one of the others. The next man was lying on his stomach already. Robert reached down and found his wallet and got a very sick feeling when he opened it. The wallet's interior flashed credentials from the Bureau of Land Management. These weren't ordinary rustlers. They were government operatives. Robert's eyes darted over their lifeless forms, trying to find other indications of their affiliation with the BLM. But it was all covert. No name tags, no obvious signs. The realization weighed heavily on Robert as he glanced at Sierra. They needed to leave, and quickly. Scanning the terrain, he soon spotted the third ATV rider, trapped beneath his vehicle, his life evidently claimed by multiple bullet wounds. Robert, his instincts on high alert, whisked Sierra away towards Big Boy, still tied nearby. Though the journey to Uncle Bill's farmhouse was a full 4 miles, the loyal steed could surely bear both their weights. The ride was silent, broken only by the occasional sip of water and their shared, unspoken reflections on the morning's horrific turn. As the familiar arch of Uncle Bill's driveway loomed ahead, the reality of confronting Aunt Margaret with the news tightened its grip on their hearts. The love story of Margaret and Bill spanned over 4.5 decades, beginning as high school sweethearts and leading to a marriage that started the day after their graduation. Drawing nearer to the house, Aunt Margaret's voice called from the barn, full of characteristic warmth. "Back so soon? Did someone fall ill?" The words, so simple and innocent, made the impending revelation feel all the more tragic. Hearing Aunt Margaret's voice made both Robert and Sierra startle, their eyes darting in her direction. Even from a distance, the shift in Margaret's expression from cheerful anticipation to deep concern was strong. Quickening her pace towards them, she seemed to sense that something was terribly wrong. Tears streamed down Sierra's face as she met her aunt's gaze, and with Robert's support, she dismounted Big Boy. Margaret, her eyes brimming with anxiety, enveloped Sierra in a tight embrace, her voice trembling. "Tell me, what's happened?" Trying to steady herself, Sierra whispered through her tears, They're gone, Aunt Margaret. They are all dead.